We have so many baby turtles and tortoises hatching here at Garden State Tortoise. Look at them all! Look at this. We've got a mess of hatchlings here, all baby turtles that have spent the last few months incubating in our incubator room. We got a couple different species in here, but the most that you'll see are of the North American wood turtle. So what I need to do is start pulling these little babies out one by one. We're gonna get them cleaned off a little bit, and then we're gonna just place them in a container where they can start hydrating themselves. So one of the first things that any species of semi-aquatic or aquatic turtle is going to do is it's going to look for water. So that's why we are putting these baby wood turtles in here. Now, the North American wood turtle is not unlike a box turtle. It's a little bit more streamlined. It has, of course, a flatter shell, but they have those slightly webbed feet. And they spend a lot of their time in mountain streams and tributaries of the rivers that are found in those mountains. They're a cool water species. They don't particularly like heat or extended heat. So, getting babies into the water like we're doing right now is exactly what needs to be done with them. And it also gets this vermiculite off, because vermiculite is a very standard incubation medium for reptile eggs of really any kind. There's a lot of other cool stuff out on the market now that you can use as well, but we have used vermiculite for many, many, many years with a lot of success and a number of species. North American wood turtles are worth talking about a little bit because they are arguably considered the world's smartest reptile. When they were put up against lab rats, they figured out the mazes just as fast, if not faster, than the rats did. And you all know, or should know, just how smart rats are. Wood turtles do something really, really interesting. One of the main components of a North American wood turtle's diet is an earthworm, or a nightcrawler. And what does that worm do when it rains? Well, once those raindrops hit the ground, the worms start making their way to the surface. What the wood turtle has done, it has evolved over many years to simulate the pounding of raindrops by lifting its body off the ground, usually with just one leg, and patting the plastron, the bottom shell, down on the ground repeatedly to simulate raindrops when there is no rain. The worms unsuspectingly come up to the surface, and the wood turtle has a wonderful, quick meal. Think of it as one big, giant, slimy piece of spaghetti. That's really smart. It's amazing that they have problem solved and figured out how to get that food item. And if you keep wood turtles, that is something that should be in their diet regularly. They also eat fruits and other things, mushrooms and lichens and stuff like that. But yeah, these guys really do love earthworms. Look at all of these babies. I wonder if there's any more in here still. We've got a lot. They all look really healthy. I don't see any losses, but I think for this container, that is all of the wood turtles. I don't see anybody hiding here. We've got a couple eggs that were bad and did not hatch, but we have two other species in here that I'm gonna pull out next. So next up, we've got a few Blandings turtles hatching right now. Another wonderful North American species, also semi-aquatic, but definitely more aquatic than the North American wood turtle. While the wood turtle lives in those mountain streams and does move considerably on land, in fact, the females are known to leave the water pretty much for the entire summer after they nest, Blandings turtles really stay in the water. They do migrate from body of water to body of water, but they like meadows, marshy meadows, fens, ponds, the margins of lakes, and they will spend some time in creeks where they will hunt for things like crayfish. I think there's only 3 out in here. We didn't have many Blandings eggs in here. There are more in another container. Oh, wait, who be this? This is another Blandings right here. Okay, so that's 4. They really got to be cleaned off. Anybody else? Is anybody else gracing us? Oh, there's a Blandings in here. I'm not sure. Did you go back into your egg, or are you? What's going on? Let's help you out here. Okay, so you see how I know this one's not ready yet? Just a little bit I want to show you. It still has quite a bit of its yolk sac or belly button. So this animal is going to stay in its egg until it is ready. Never force them out. Believe you're in the same position. Yeah, look at that. Ooh, it really wants to come out though. Look at it go! It wants to come out. It's coming out right now on camera. Okay, all right, you are apparently ready. Always let the animal tell you when it is ready. That's amazing. This little baby's taking its first steps right in my fingers. Hello. Now, even though it was ready to come out of the egg, I am gonna let it sit in here a little bit longer because I could feel that it does have a yolk sac, and that should always be fully absorbed before it moves on to the next portion of its life, which would be getting introduced into water. One interesting fact about the reproductive nature of wood turtles and Blanding's turtles is that there's a big difference in the way their sexes are determined. North American wood turtles are one of the only species of turtle where their sex is determined by chromosomes, not unlike humans, whereas Blanding's turtles and the vast majority of turtle and tortoise species, their sexes are determined by the temperature the eggs are incubated at. So typically, the lower the incubation will produce males, higher females, and somewhere in the middle you will get a combination of both sexes. Whereas wood turtles, it's all up to those chromosomes. Now, there's one last species in here, and I think we only have one because there was only 1 or 2 eggs in here. And it's this one right here. This animal is not from North America at all. This is Cora flavomarginata, the Chinese box turtle, also known as the yellow margined box turtle. So I got a little container here. And box turtles also will look for some water after they hatch, or at least a very humid, moist environment where they can hydrate. And we will let this little one clean itself off. Now that these guys and girls have cleaned off a little bit, we can get a closer look at the markings and just how different they actually are. The North American wood turtle, which is right here, has a pretty uniform color to it, being a brown or gray with some mottled markings. But as it grows, it will develop that beautifully sculpted looking shell, which is where the wood turtle gets its name, and it'll get those gorgeous red-orange limbs and soft parts. The Chinese box turtle will develop a gorgeous mahogany shell with a yellow dorsal stripe, and it already has that distinct peach or orange face with the yellow stripes. It'll have a black plastron, which it already has. And the Blanding's turtle will get that quintessential textbook-looking beautiful yellow throat on a dark-colored head, and its shell will be littered with beautiful yellowish white spots and flecks. Interestingly though, the Chinese box turtle and the Blanding's turtle will develop the plastral hinge that allows them to partially or even fully close up, whereas the wood turtle will remain to have a fixed plastron because they don't develop any kind of hinge to close themselves up. Beautiful, right out of the egg. They're just so different, and I'd like to say that they are mini versions of the adults, but they do change quite a bit throughout development into adulthood. Now, we also recently hatched some of our baby Florida box turtles, which is another species that annually hatches here. But I wanted to show you guys the difference between a North American box turtle hatchling, such as the Florida, compared to the Chinese. So much is similar about these turtles in having that domed carapace. They grow to be similar sizes. They both have the hinge that allows them to close up. But just look at how different the markings are. These are pretty much what they're going to look like once they grow up. There will be some differences, but the Florida has that beautiful black and yellow look to it, whereas the Chinese has that beautiful mahogany and yellow look to it with the distinct striping and peach colored face. It's so cool to look at turtle diversity. For me, that never gets old, and when you get to see it in the babies, it just makes it that much better. All right, the hatching party is just getting started because now we're moving on from turtles to baby tortoises. And we have all 3 varieties of Herman's tortoise hatching right here at Garden State Tortoise. And this is a special time of year that never, ever, ever, ever gets old for me because Herman's tortoises are my ultimate favorite species, especially the Western. So I've got 3 containers here of the babies that have been hatching so far. It's very easy for me to tell them apart, but for other people, it's not. So we've got the Westerns in here, we've got Easterns in here, and we've got Dalmatians in here. A couple pieces of eggshell still. And I thought it'd be worth mentioning that this is, of course, not how any of these baby turtles and tortoises are kept permanently. These are simply the containers to get them started in. Baby tortoises are usually folded in half so they get to straighten out, and both turtle and tortoise can absorb the yolk sac. They usually don't eat for the first week of life. So it's just a way to get them started and just kind of used to breathing air, I guess, you know? So let's see what we got here. This is one container that has pretty much exploded with Herman's tortoise fun. So right off the bat, I can tell that this one is a Dalmatian and this one is a Western. So we'll pull this one out first. And let's clean it off just a little bit. You can see how beautiful its markings are already. And what I'm gonna do is just let them get a little bath because that first drink is important for them. So unlike turtles, they're not looking for water to go hide in or swim away in, but all living things do require water. So we have to make sure that our baby tortoises get hydrated right off the bat. It sets them up for success because right now they are very fragile. So let's just pull these guys and girls out and see what we got. Beautiful. Here you go. So all baby turtles and tortoises, it doesn't matter the species, are born with something you will see people refer to as an egg tooth or caruncle, and that's on the snout. And they use that little bony protrusion to break through the eggshell. And in the case of most turtle species and just a few tortoise species, the eggs are going to be leathery shelled. There are turtle species that have brittle shelled eggs, but tortoises primarily, except for the Minoria genus, which are those mountain tortoises, all the eggs of tortoises are going to be brittle shelled, not unlike a chicken egg. So the babies do need something to penetrate through that. And lucky for turtles and tortoises, that egg tooth works great for leathery shelled eggs, and it works great for brittle shelled eggs. And then within the first week, that'll fall off, and they don't need it anymore. Turtles and tortoises do not have actual teeth of any kind. They have beaks like birds, and they use both serration and a pointed end to the beak to rip off pieces of vegetation, eat some animal matter. Redfoot tortoises, for example, will eat animal matter, and of course pierce through fruit if they happen to be a fruit-eating species. So they're well equipped. They know what to do from day one. Nobody chops up their food in nature. The babies just choose small leaves. And even if they come across big leaves of something, they just bite into it, tear it off. And as time goes on, that's how they get stronger. The beak has a nice normal wear to it because you will see a lot of captive bred tortoises with a grossly overgrown beak. And once it gets too overgrown, they can't really open their mouth wide enough to get food and they can starve to death. And that's usually from eating too soft of a diet, the wrong things, or a commercial diet all the time instead of giving them natural plant matter and other things that their species would normally eat in the wild. So these babies, quick drinks, that's all they're doing. Some of them are already done drinking, but if you see their head down in the water, they're not drowning, they're just taking in as much water as they can, and this will help them to swell up and straighten out. And then, you know, in a few days, we'll start offering them food and get them eating consistently. So once they are done getting that first drink, we put them right into these little units and we separate them by subspecies and even geographical locality because it is crucial for Herman's tortoises to stay pure even in captivity. At risk of sounding like a broken record, once again, one of the major threats to Herman's tortoises, particularly the endangered Western subspecies, is impurity. And that's not just in captivity, that's also in the wild. Back when we were over in France, they were telling us that some 20% of the wild population there is some degree of a hybrid with the Eastern subspecies. And the reason that happens is because people have them as pets. They don't even stop to think that they don't live in the natural range of that particular Herman's tortoise. They go ahead and let it go, and then that really sensitive wild population ends up becoming polluted as far as its bloodline goes. These are Western Hermans, so they will go into the Western Hermans bin, and I actually have two different localities right here in my hand. Each one on the end is from southern France. That would be that animal's distinct locality. And this one right here in the middle is from Sicily, Italy. So these animals are in fact very different. We'll save that for another video. We've covered it a little bit on Herman's videos in the past, but it is crucial for these animals to stay as pure as possible, and that will see them into the future. So let's see, who else we got here? We have more Western. We've got, these are the last three. 2 Sicilian and 1 more from southern France. And as these animals grow, that distinct look that I'm talking about will develop really nicely. And by the time these animals are subadults, if you know Herman's tortoises, it'll be very easy for you to tell who is from France and who is from Sicily. So the last thing to do here for these babies is to just place these lids on, because we want to keep them in a humid microclimate. Babies can dry out very quickly, even though Herman's tortoises and other members of the Testudo genus, that Mediterranean genus, do come from drier areas in nature. When they are babies, they will seek out areas under cover by using debris and plant matter. Try to stay out of that direct sunlight because it can just fry them so quickly. So you guys might be wondering, and I know there have been questions before, where do all these babies go that we hatch? Well, they go to new homes. You might be wondering, well, what about releasing them back into nature? The animals at Garden State Tortoise have nothing to do with the wild populations. None of these are animals that we have removed from the wild. They're all here. They're supposed to be here in one way or another. And these animals go to new homes. Some of them we do raise here, of course. A lot of the animals that are growing up around here now are ones that were born right here with us. So that means none of these babies go to the wild. That would actually be extremely illegal. There's a lot of legalities that go into that, and specific conservation organizations are permitted to house animals that have been removed from the wild in a known location, that have been disease tested, and then those babies will be part of a head starting program and released into nature. Think of our Diamondback Terrapin project, for example, the Terrapin Conservation Initiative. We hatch the babies naturally in the ground off-site, and then those babies go right back to the wild. These are animals in captive management. So if you guys are interested in any of these for next year, go over to GardenStateTortoise.com, and everything is explained on there on how you can go about getting one. Exciting, exciting times here. I love this time of year because there's always so much to look forward to, and experiencing the miracle of life never ever gets old. Now, there's one more thing we got to do today. If you guys remember, we had a really bad leech problem in our aquascape ecosystem, and Chief Brody and Ellen, our alligator snappers who were suffering from those leeches, had to come out. Well, we have one of our potential solutions. They just arrived. They are bluegill sunfish, and they are leech eaters. So we ordered some from a fishery. They just got here, and they've been acclimating in the pond. You can't just throw fish into water. You have to keep them in the bag, let them acclimate for 15 to 30 minutes before you release them. And it has been about that amount of time. So we're gonna go ahead and release them into the pond. There's a Blandings turtle right here trying to get into the bag of fish. Not for you. Oh, there's a painted turtle too. All right, so we're gonna release them over here because it's best to put them in the deepest portion of the pond. So we now have other species back in this pond. You know, we had moved some things around in the spring to get Chief Brody and Ellen in here, but all in all, we're basically learning that this isn't quite suitable for them as far as a permanent habitat. It's a beautiful pond, it's very functional, it's fully bioactive and everything, but big giant alligator snapping turtles like Brody and Ellen really need deep water, and because they don't bask like the species that are now in here, they are subject to just constantly being covered in these leeches. These are smooth turtle leeches is what they're called. They're very common in North American populations of freshwater turtle. And a lot of times they don't really pose much of a threat because with basking species or semi-terrestrial species like wood turtles, for example, they could just leave the water and the leeches will eventually fall off. But we need to control these leeches in some way. So here go our bluegill sunfish. Please don't eat them, Blandings turtle. Please don't. Give them a chance, please. Please give them a chance. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. No, 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 no. Oh, okay. They should be a little bit too big for the Blandings to go after, and they will get bigger. Interesting with these leeches, they actually play a little bit of a parental role. The parent can lay upwards of 200 babies into cocoons. And then once the babies hatch, the adult actually carries them around with them and will deposit them right before they hatch on a safe spot on the turtle, believe it or not. And then the baby leeches might stay on that exact turtle until adulthood. But again, with a semi-aquatic or semi-terrestrial species, they're not constantly getting drained of blood or really all that uncomfortable, because once they dry out by basking or moving on land, the leeches either die or fall off. But with alligator snapping turtles, because they are fully aquatic and literally the females are the only ones that will leave the water only one time a year to lay eggs, they just become completely infested with them, and that can eventually lead to a problem. That's what we were seeing. So Chief Brody and Ellen, I think their time in the aquascape pond is over. We've got some seriously awesome plans for them, so stay tuned for that. But now our Blandings, wood turtles, and western painted turtles, and also razorback musk turtles are back in here. And what's cool is Blandings, painted, and musk will make a meal out of these leeches. So between the fish and those specific species of turtle, we may naturally see a decline in the leeches, which is great. But even with them still being in here, these types of turtles can handle it. We did mention in a couple videos, and also one we did with our friend Kenan, that we were thinking about maybe blasting this thing with salt, but the biology of a pond is so crucial for the pond and its inhabitants to stay healthy. If we blast this thing with salt, we're gonna kill the plants, kill the inhabitants, and then once we go to put turtles back in it, we're just gonna be starting all over again. This pond really is awesome the way it is. We just needed to change things up, and that is that.